morning. Welcome to Viewpoint, your program of personalities, politicians, and perspectives. We certainly have all three this morning. And for perspectives, we have out there in western Oklahoma somewhere, Mr. Rasheed Hooda. Good morning, sir, and did you have a good night? And where did you put your head down last night, sir?
Good morning, sir. I was in Edmond, Oklahoma.
Edmond.
Last night. Yes, it's a little bit north of Oklahoma City. Mm-hmm. And I am going to head into Oklahoma City today. And then next week I'm going to take a break for my son's birthday, go back to Houston tomorrow, and be back in a week.
Well, now, it'll take you a month to go through Oklahoma City, won't it?
Well, it seems that way. But no, I have picked up quite a bit of pace with all this walking that I have done. When I started, a 12-mile day was a stretch. Now I can do 20 and not feel it. So
really?
I'm hoping that I would continue doing that and make a little better progress when I return.
Yes. So, tell me, sir, you've picked up some interesting friends along the way. Been befriended by people who have had you stay overnight in their homes, which is quite decent, and a nice break for you. Just like you and I struck up a conversation. Is that how you gathered these friends?
More or less, yes, sir. Mm-hmm. This couple that I met a few days ago, Jerry and Martha. Jerry saw me walking when he was going to Walmart, and then as he was returning, I had stopped to take pictures on the side of the road of an old building. And what caught my eye was there was an old building in the front, and behind that there was a kind of a house, shed type structure with sun panels on it, solar panels on it. And then a little bit further back was a small windmill that looked like a helicopter. I thought that was a kind of a neat combination of the past and present, an old building and a solar panels and windmill and all that. So I stopped to take a picture, and he passed me, and he lived only a block away from where I was taking pictures. And he went home and got his wife and says, "You gotta come out and see this guy. He's an interesting guy walking down the road." And so they came out and met me on Route 66, and we had a little chat, and they asked me if I had a place to stay that night. And I said, well, I'm headed to the fire station, and they've been good to me thus far, so I'm going to give it a try and see how that works. And they said, well, if it doesn't, there's our house, that white pickup and red car, that's our house. If it doesn't work out over there, come back over here. And I said, okay, sounds good. And then I went to the fire station, but the fire chief was out of town, and he was the only one who could authorize it, and it was weekend. So as soon as I turned around to head back, and there was a pickup. And it was Jerry going, "Are you headed back to our house?" I said, yes. He said, well, hop in the pickup and I'll drive you home. Yeah. So that's how I ended up in, but the amazing thing is they caught up with me yesterday, about 25, 30 miles down the road.
I read that on your blog. You write a really interesting blog, Rasheed, and of course you're compiling these notes. Hopefully, at the time you get to Los Angeles, you'll have an outline of a book in your mind. Does have anything unusual that took place in the last? Other than these folks are kind of unusual. I'd say they may be. Off the grid just a little bit. Saw their pictures, and he's bearded, and so I think maybe that's why you hooked up with the sympathetic lines there. Both of you have those full beards.
Yes. So go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to know how your meal situation is going. You managed to do a decent start with a decent breakfast.
Yes.
And then as you go through the day, you supply yourself with little supplements, and then you don't stop to eat at noon until you don't find, when you get where you're going that evening, that's when you try to find some place to eat. Is that correct?
Generally, that's how it works. Sometimes it varies. Like yesterday, I didn't have big breakfast. I only had the coffee and a donut to start with, and then when I got to Arcadia, I had a hamburger at that point, and then nothing in the evening other than I had a little biscuit and coffee. So yeah, it varies. And
Are you getting regular emails from people that you do not know as that picked up on your blog and so forth, Rasheed?
Not emails, but I get messages on Facebook and comments on my post at my blog. When I link my blog on Facebook, a lot of people are commenting and leaving messages there. So,
well, sir,
yes, I do get.
We have a really important guest this morning. She's going to admonish people to get their tails out there and vote this November. And so we're going to thank you very much again this morning. And we'll look forward. In the meantime, I'll be in touch with you, and we'll look forward to talking with you next Wednesday morning.
All right, Miss Bill.
Thank you very much.
It.
Have a great day, sir.
You too. Bye-bye.
Stay safe. Of course, that was Mr. Rasheed Hooda, whom we met several weeks ago at the IGA store, that friendly store in the corner here. Is so good in community service. I just happened to be in there and met this gentleman, so he's trekking all the way to Los Angeles on old 66, doing 12 to 13 to 20 miles a day. We ought to get right on with our program, shouldn't we, Judy? We have kudos, if I may, to start this morning. Mitzi Rolfs does a great job in this recycling business for our folks here in the county, and we really appreciate her work. And last week, she, and in conjunction with the State Bank of Lincoln, I want to make that abundantly clear, those folks who had sensitive articles that they wanted to have shredded and so forth, they were shredded and carted away by courtesy of the State Bank, who underwrite the expense of that shredding, and I think they should receive a big kudo for that. Yeah, really, I took advantage of that. Well, right after Buzz died, we had checks that he'd saved that were canceled checks from when we lived in Minneapolis. I think they could be gone. And I had bags of them, and you could bring 3 bags, so pay attention. Maybe it's the same this time. You can bring 3 bags of things to be shredded. Well, it's a great service. Pardon? Now, it's a great service. When is it? Tell them when it is. Well, they had it last Saturday, and I don't know when Mitzi's got it scheduled again. I really don't. They've been very good about getting together. Oh, it's a great service. Oh, it really is. Good grief. Speaking of service, and boy, do we get service out of this lady here. I think you ought to introduce our guest this morning. You want me to do that right now? Yeah, I think. All right, I just do that. I want to bring her onto the picture right now. Okay. Well, everybody knows our guest, Sally Turner, who's very busy at this time. Early voting has already begun. Sally is our county clerk in charge of To Vote, and her shirt this morning is neon, and it says "Vote. It counts." It's not only a privilege, I think it's a responsibility. And I've heard umpteen people say, well, I don't know, I'm not really nuts about either one of them. I don't think I'll vote. Well, shame on you. Well, that brings up a quote that I read. This is a good time for this quote. Okay. Bad officials are the ones elected by good citizens who do not vote. That's about as basic as it gets. Well, it certainly doesn't describe our guest. She's an excellent official. Oh, my goodness. She's been recognized statewide as being terribly efficient, competent, and all other words of that same ilk. Well, you know, I've always said she's the best county clerk in 102 counties. So. That's right. Gee, my head's going to be too big to walk to the door. That's all right. Well, I've got John to hold you down. Well, I know tomorrow morning I'm going to a meeting at the courthouse because I've been an election judge for a few years now, and we always get updated and try to be sharp.
it's kind of a hill to climb for me, but some of those people that are election judges are just miraculous. I mean, they know it inside and out.
Well, you sure do, Judy. That's for sure. You've been with us for a long time, and we really appreciate that.
I've been doing it for a long time. It's an interesting thing to do, and of course now that it's been modernized, so it's not like when my friend Betty Tiffany used to be an election judge at West Lincoln Broadwell School. And one time they had to stay until 7 in the morning because they hand counted the ballots, and it was an election not unlike this one might be. I think this is liable to be a big one. I know the primary this year was unlike anything I personally have ever seen.
I think we're going to see that same turnout in this election. In Logan County, we generally are in a presidential is somewhere 60-70%, and I think maybe just from looking at the by mail that we've had so far, we had about the first day to mail them out was last Thursday from the request that we had received, and we sent out around 300 already. Yeah. And then in the office, we started early voting as well on Thursday. And we've had just probably a nice flow of around 20 people a day, something to that nature. So we're hoping, and we're pushing, like I think I've mentioned to you before, we're pushing early voting, and we're pushing by mail voting. And one of the big reasons for that is so that it can help alleviate the pressure that's on the election judges on election day, because we don't want them to be swamped, and we don't want lines at the polling place if we don't have to have them. So if you do know that you want to cast a ballot, and you do know who you want to vote for, and I think we need to talk a little bit about what's on the ballot here in a minute. But if you do already know those things, feel free to either call our office for a ballot by mail, if you're a registered voter, of course, in Logan County. Get on our website. We have a new website in Logan County, and it's very nice, and it'd be a good idea to get on and just look at the different services that are on there. And that's www.logancountyil.gov. And under the government pages, you can find our information. There's all kinds of information on our page. One of the key things is on the front page of ours. It talks about vote by mail and how you get an application. You can download the application, print it off, send it in, bring it by. We're going to do a flyer on October 19th that shows the ballot and the polling places, and I'll also have a little place on the bottom you can cut that off and request a ballot by mail on that flyer as well. So we're really trying to push that so we can help new election judges that have such a long day on election day to try and alleviate some of that pressure that you would have, and of course the long lines.
The site, excuse me, Judy, I want to make sure, logancounty.il.gov.
It's actually, the new website is logancountyil.gov. That's correct.
But these, okay, well, leave that dot between Logan County and IL out.
Yes, logancountyil.gov.
Thank you very much. Now, can you tell, have you had many people hitting on that site?
Yeah, we can. I think I saw the other day there was maybe 800 hits.
Wow.
So that's quite a few.
That's quite a few, yes. Yes, really.
Yeah. So you're looking for a heck of a turnout, really, all things being equal.
Yeah, and when we add it all together for the office early and by mail, plus the polling place, I think we'll see in the a turnout of 70%.
Well, the general feeling is, what I heard some wag say the other day, the worst thing about this election is somebody's going to win. This is Logan County's version of Fox News, fair and biased, not unbiased.
Well, and Judy mentioned too that there's a lot of people that are out there that are just, everybody's always fed up at election time when it's a presidential. We're sick of hearing the commercials, and I don't think that's anything different than it is 4 years before this, or it's all at that time. But instead of not voting, and they don't care to cast a ballot perhaps for president, there's a lot of other things that are on the ballot.
They're very important.
And let's talk about them. One is a constitutional amendment, and we all got the blue little leaflet. In fact, I got 3 of them. I guess they figured I was slow on the uptake or something. Talking about the transportation funds, and that maybe we should look at keeping them for roads and bridges and upkeeping our infrastructure, which made sense to me. And it gives you the pros and the cons. Let's talk for a little minute about that.
Well, I'm not a proponent for or against it, of course, because I'm an election official. But everyone will receive that. Every resident. So they must think you have 3 residences or something. But Secretary of State sends out that blue pamphlet, and it explains, as you mentioned, the pros and the cons of voting yes or no for this issue. It's the very first thing on your ballot, and of course you have to vote yes or no. And you don't have to vote for it at all, but it explains to you that if you didn't vote, it constitutes a no vote if you don't vote for it. So if you are for it, you might as well vote yes, because if you don't, it's going to constitute a no. A good person to visit about this constitutional question is Dave Bender of Lincoln, Illinois. Dave is the director of the Illinois, let me think how this is, Illinois Engineers Association, I believe, and he's been instrumental in assisting with all that information. So he's a good go-to person if you had some questions about that.
Well, what it boils down to is if this passes, they'll dedicate, I think is the word that they generally use, those funds for.
That's my understanding as well.
Keeping it all up. Which makes sense, because in Illinois we kind of have a propensity for robbing Peter to pay Paul. I don't know if you've noticed that, Sally, but I just want to draw that to your attention.
In the job, she probably had a chance to notice that.
Well, you're right, Judy, and I think that's the big reason why when we had the 6 months ago, I guess it was, when we didn't have a budget.
Yes.
Well, none of the motor fuel tax was distributed to any of our local tax districts. Right. So the cities didn't get their motor fuel tax money. The townships didn't, and they used that, and counties as well. And they used that to complete their road projects, pay their employees, things of that nature. So I think that was a big eye-opener for individuals in those service areas to say, hey, we need to do this.
Well, that budget monkeying screwed up a lot of things. It was pretty much across the board. I volunteer at the prison, and at the women's prison at Lincoln, and it's the program that I participate in is run by Lutheran Social Services, their division of prison and family ministry. And because there was no budget, there were no funds, and so they had to let go all their paid people. And there's one wonderful woman who continued as a volunteer to go from prison to prison to prison. So of course they can't have it as often as they did at any given prison, because she can be spread only so thin.
What volunteer, I'm curious, what do you volunteer at the prison? What do you do?
It's called Storybook, and
it's a great program for the kids of
it is, because Bill did it too. And what it is a twofer. It's not only nice for the parent, because they do it at men's and women's places, but for the children. In the olden days, we used to do it on the little cassettes, Yeah. And there were many tales of the cassette having been worn out because the children listened and listened and listened to their parents' voice.
Oh,
the parent signs up for this, comes to the office, and then a volunteer takes them to a classroom with a little recorder, and they visit a little minute, which is recorded. They've chosen an age-appropriate book for their children, And then they read the book to the children. Then they visit another little minute. And then we go back and they burn a CD from the recorder. And the CD and the book are sent to the child.
Interesting.
And it's a wonderful, wonderful program for the kids.
It is that. Of the volunteering that I've done down through the years, that's been perhaps one of the most satisfactory because it's for the children.
Yes.
The innocents whose mother or dad are incarcerated for whatever reason. And it's a great thing. I sat transfixed one morning when I heard a guy sing the book to his kids. And it was, anyway, it's a
Sorry,
nice
didn't mean to segue off that. That's really interesting.
We digress.
Yes, we did.
Anyway, yes. Now some of the issues that are going to be,
Excuse me.
you're excused for that. Some of the issues that are going to be on the ballot today that the people need to be aware of, Sally.
Yeah, well, as for issues, that's the only issue we have, like information about the constitutional question. Other than that, we have no referenda whatsoever.
That's a good thing.
But we have United States Senate. That's a big race. Of course, President, Vice President. The 18th Congressional District, which is for Logan County. There's a few write-ins, which, Judy, you'll find out in class. There's actually 10 people that have written in to be a write-in candidate for president. Everybody wants to be president, I guess. So
I can't imagine why.
Yeah.
I think it's amazing they can find two people to run against one another.
Well, you know,
what a job.
the interesting thing for a write-in candidate, and of course, I want to make mention that write-in period has ceased. No one else can file as a write-in to be on the ballot. So it just is.
Oh, shucks, and I was going to.
Yeah. So I don't want everybody to run up to our office and think they want to file as a write-in for anything. So that is, that's done.
Yeah.
But to be a write-in for president, you'd have to send your write-in candidacy to every county or every election authority. So in Illinois, they had to send it to 110 places. That's a lot of work to be a write-in and probably not win.
And you can't just write in somebody that you think would be wonderful because they have to have been. Well, I suppose there's some vetting process, isn't there? I mean, can you just?
I'm not sure we have any vetting process at all in the current situation.
Well, there is that.
Well, there are write-in lines on certain offices and no write-in lines on others, and the reason for that is, if someone did file for a write-in candidacy prior to that cutoff date, which is since passed back in September, we have to create a line for that office, such as president. President, there's another line after all the names that are on there, the Green Party, Libertarian Party, the Republicans, and the Democrats. Then there's a line in that says write-in. Well, if you write in Mickey Mouse because you think this is a Mickey Mouse election, that isn't a valid write-in. The judges know which are valid write-ins, and those are the only write-ins that can be counted. So the only thing that you're doing if you do write something goofy on your write-in line is just confusing the judges on election day because they have to go find that ballot to see if it is a valid write-in, and that's a lot of work for them. So we'd appreciate it if you didn't write
so don't
something
get
goofy.
clever.
Yeah, that would be nice.
Just follow the rules.
And then the other things on the ballot are we have county offices. We have our circuit clerks up this time, Mary Kelly. Jonathan Wright is also up for state's attorney. Our coroner, Bob Thomas, he's up as well. None of them have any opposition. And then we have all of our county board offices. There's no opposition for those. There are some new candidates. Annette Welch is running for county board, and I can't remember
Who was?
Annette Welch. She's running for county board for a 4-year term, and I don't recall what district she's in, but she's in Lincoln. And then for the 2-year unexpired term is Adam Schmidt, and he's one of our newer appointed board members. He's doing a great job, and so he's running as well. Well, if people want to look at our website, again, I mentioned that was www.logancountyil.gov. There is a sample ballot, so they can go and look at that sample ballot to see who it is.
Get an idea before they get there.
Yeah, and also we'll be coming out with a flyer in the Courier. I believe it's October 19th. It's a two-sided flyer, kind of like you get the IGA flyer or whatever, but it's a slick flyer. And on both sides, one side is the ballot, the other side is the polling places and some information. And then a small cutoff part where if you want to vote by mail, you can fill that information out and mail that information in to our office. Of course, you need to be a registered voter in Logan County in order to do that.
Right, of course. Yeah, it doesn't, we're not like Chicago, the vote early and often business up there. And they say that some people who died a while back vote up there, but I don't know that to be true.
I don't know that either.
I would not be a bit surprised, and I would expect to find it true if you could verify it.
Well, and there are a few other things. There's different ways to vote, of course, in this election. There's election day voting.
Yes.
There's early voting, which goes on now through the 7th.
Through the 7th. That's
which is
just
the day
Friday.
before.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
Oh, the 7th
November
of November.
7th. Yes. So early voting goes all the way through November 7th. Then we also have a grace period registration of voting. Grace period registration of voting starts on October 12th. So if you go to a voter registration drive or something of that nature and you register with a registrar, you can't do that after October 11th. You have to come to our office and register to vote, 2 forms of ID, one with your current address, register to vote, and cast your ballot at the same time. And that goes all the way through November 8th, which is Election Day. So we are open on Election Day from 6 to 7, just like the polls.
Okay, so actually then, if you were remiss in getting registered, you could go up to the courthouse.
Absolutely.
And take care of the whole thing in one fell swoop.
Absolutely. You need to be a resident of a Logan County where you live for at least 30 days. Then you can come up to our office, again, with 2 forms of identification, one with your current address, register to vote, and cast your ballot at the same time. And we just recently had a court case in Illinois that challenged the larger counties, 100,000 or more, could do grace period registration and voting at the polling place. And that got, there was a stay by, I believe it was in the district court in Chicago, and I don't remember which one it was, but 7th district things. And it basically said no grace period registration of voting in any polling place on Election Day. Whether or not you're 100,000 or less or more, you can't go to the polls and vote on Election Day by grace. You have to come to the election authority's office. And
I think that's good.
Okay, we have to vote. We have to exercise our right of franchise for some very good sponsors.
Oh, sorry.
When we talk with Mr. Hooda, it kind of upsets the sink, but we find that fun to do. So let's go ahead with our sponsorship, Mr. Ash. Yes. Right back live in the studios here. The program is Viewpoint. Our guest this morning is Sally Literally Turner, who have given us, and I don't want to embarrass her, but Judith and Jim and I both feel that we probably have the, as I say often, the best county clerk in 102 counties. Over and above elections, there are things going on every day in that office that serve the county and the residents of the county. Perhaps maybe you could just give us an oversight, Mrs. Turner, about the various other duties. You know, you're not just up there for elections.
Oh, sure, yeah. There's a myriad of things that our office does. We do vital records, marriage licenses, things of that nature, genealogy. And, you know, truthfully, genealogy is a really big part of it. We get people all over the United States.
And it's going to be getting bigger.
And, and other countries that come in and want to research who their great-grandparents were, where their great-grandparents lived, things of that nature. Then we also do, of course, recording. County clerk and recorder, and counties over 100,000 can have an elected county clerk and a county recorder, but ours has just one. And a lot of counties have merged that duty, even if they were a little bit larger. So in that, we filed your deeds, your mortgages, anything that has to do with owning a home, things of that nature. And that's a large part of our office is recording. We also do tax extension. Tax extension is just a part in the tax relay in which we receive the numbers from the assessor, which is the assessed value, and our job is to figure out a tax rate to know what goes on your tax bill. And receive that information based on what your local districts are asking for. Your parks, your schools, your libraries, how much do they need in real estate taxes in order to run their school? So that's a large part too. I mean, enterprise zones and TIF districts, and that's a very difficult, intricate system, the tax extension part. And so
In your office, for the most part, out of all the offices in the courthouse, and Judith and I have been a little biased about that. We think that all of the offices in the courthouse are serving us well, and you've got some great staff. The people, right from the bottom up, serve us well. Your office perhaps would meet more of the public by virtue of the services that you perform for the county, would it?
Sure. I guess, everyone that was born in Logan County would have to come to our office to get a birth certificate, a copy of their marriage license, things to that nature. So we do see a lot of people in that regard. Also, if you wanted to register to vote, you could come to our office any time to register and vote, not just when there's a voter registration drive. Or one other thing I wanted to mention about voter registration is now the state of Illinois has paperless online voter registration. So if you have a driver's license, or if you have a state ID through the Secretary of State's office, you can go through our website, and again, the logancountyil.gov, and you can register online to vote. You can get on that site through our site, and you just input your information, your driver's license number, and it'll populate all that information, and you can get registered to vote that way. How much more easy can it get to register to vote before Election Day? And that's October 23rd is the last date that you can do that.
Date on that.
So wherever you are in Illinois, if you have a driver's license or a state ID, you can get on and register to vote that way, which is a simple way.
Now, at your office, you have to have 2 forms of identification, and for the online, a driver's license.
That's a good point, Judy. They've already done that step when you went to get your driver's license. So they already have identified you.
Okay.
So that's why it's easier for that to be done, because driver's license has already done that step when you went to get your driver's license. You had to, like when you go get your driver's license for the first time, you have to bring your birth certificate when you go get your driver's license. We see that all the time.
See, I've been born so long and driving so long, I forgot what you had to have to do either.
Speaking of driving, the other day the old fellow had to get his license renewed, and Judy asked me the question coming up: at what point do you know, Mrs. Turner, that you have to take the exam every year?
Well, I do know this. I have a birthday coming up, and I got my renewal in the mail.
Yes.
And since I'm a safe driver, I could do it online.
Oh.
So I just entered my information.
Interesting.
And gave them my $30 online. Of course, $1 for processing fee. And so I don't know how often renewal comes up, but I do know that if you're a safe driver, you can do it online.
I've long since reached the point where you have to do it every year for old folks.
Well, and interesting too, Bill, is one of the questions on the site when I was doing that was, are you registered to vote?
Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah.
And that's what the Secretary of State, when they passed all these laws about the National Voter Registration Act, and we incorporated it into Illinois, we have to ask that question when you're receiving services at the driver's license facility.
I'll say this out there: they're assiduous about their duties, and that's a good thing. I'm not really facetious about that. They flunked me on the I part. They said read line 5. I said I can't even see line 5. So I had to go down. And in old days, when it was run by somebody else, there was no problem. You should say that things don't work anyway. So they're pointed by the book, which is good, and I want to emphasize that. I wasn't criticizing it at all. I had to go to my ophthalmologist and get a statement from her, and then I had to trot myself back there. Okay. So I'm all clear to go now. So there's another office that gives us really good service.
Sure. And also, Senate Bill 172 from last year is now put into place, of course, as a public act. But one of the other things that Senate Bill 172 said to do is all state agencies have to offer the opportunity to register to vote, but electronically. So those employees that are meeting with individuals for the service have to put it in online. However, the state didn't have the money to do this because they need software updates, probably computer updates in order to incorporate it with the State Board of Elections paperless online voter registration. So they're not doing that because they don't have the money to do it. So our legislature was thinking, oh, this is a great thing to do, but there's no money to do it. So they're not practicing.
You know, it occurs to me, and we're about out of time here, I was just thinking, you and I visited Judy off air about this matter of term limits. It appears to me, Mrs. Turner, that the voters being held hostage in this regard because some not so noted jurists decided that it could not appear on the ballot, and that's unfortunate. And the next initiative will come out of the legislature, and the legislature being controlled by Mike Madigan and all of Cook County, our chances of getting term limits are about zip.
Yeah, you know, there's term limits in the state, and then there can be term limits countywide.
Yes.
Indiana has term limits for countywide officers. However, what they do is, I've seen maybe a county clerk run their 2 4-year terms, and then they switch with the circuit clerk.
Yes.
You know, and that's not really what we're getting at, but I think the differences on the county level, or I'll say a local level, is that those individuals that hold those offices actually do the job. If their people don't show up that day, they all have to do the work. So you have to know what your office does and what all the individual processes are. But on a state level, you know, there's people under you that you don't actually physically. I mean, do you see the Secretary of State walking down to the driver's license facility and doing a driver's license? No,
not so much.
So it's, you know, it's more about policy and things of that nature and that higher level. So, I mean, I don't see a problem with term limits on. That's my personal view on that higher level. I probably would want to speculate. I mean, of course, I've been there 6 terms, which makes me sound like, you know, why are you saying that? The pot calling the kettle black.
Well, but Mr. Shakespeare said, there's the rub. The rub there is that we're well served in this kind of. We don't have an individual in the office who can sit there and do things to self-perpetuate her job. You are elected by and anybody in this county can run if they want to, as long as they're qualified to.
But they don't want to.
They don't want to because we're well served.
I think you're right, Judy. You know, we have on the county board, we lost a few people here and there, and it took us a while to find someone.
Yes.
And, you know, truthfully, our county board, they give a lot of their time, and they have a lot of meetings, and they see their constituents, and then they have their committee meetings, and they might take 2 hours long.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they're not getting rich doing what they're doing, and
we can complain about local officials, and we do. But do we ever put our money where our mouth is? You know, how many contested offices are there ever? And local elections are just a whole different ball game than the others, because you know these people.
That's it.
Right.
Yeah.
That's the difference. We know that we're getting value.
Yeah, for our dollar.
For our dollar
in
these county offices. We're just well served. And I hope that people will recognize that and mention that once in a while as I see these folks at Old Joe's or somewhere. Well,
in regard to elections, just one other thing to wrap up.
Yes, please.
The city of Lincoln will be having a primary election in February 28th. And right now, the offices of alderman and mayor are up, also treasurer and city clerk. So if anyone's interested in the city of Lincoln running for one of those offices, they need to go see Susan Gilball at the city clerk's office. That's where you would pick up your petition packet. You can circulate petitions now, and I have the date where you can file with her. December 12th is the first date you can file with Susan's office if you want to run for mayor, city clerk, treasurer, or alderman. And that's the city primary, and that'll be on February 28th is when that's held.
Do you have anything else on your notes that you would like to make sure we cover before we come to the conclusion?
I don't think so. I just wanted to mention no grace period registration at the polls. Anybody that wants to wait until the last day, we'd encourage you not to wait till the last day. To get online, do it the paperless online voter registration, which is the easiest way to do if you have a driver's license or a state ID, before October 23rd. Otherwise, our office is open from 6 o'clock to 7 o'clock on election day. And we are open only for election services. We're not open for any other services. No recording services, no genealogy, no birth certificates, no marriage licenses, only for elections.
And that probably keeps you busy.
Yes, it did very much so in March.
I bet it did.
Any final question from you, Mrs. Busby?
No, but I'm just happy she came to be with us again.
I'll see you at election judge school.
Yes.
We had election judge school last night, which was great.
Yes.
We have one tonight at 5:30, and then we have another training tomorrow morning at 9:30.
I'll be there.
There's another little bit of service to the community. The election judges, they're so well remunerated. They come up there and they work.
It's a long day.
Yes, it is. Well, our clock has run out on our program this morning.
Thanks for having me.
I found a quote that perhaps would be more appropriate this year than any other year. Voting is being allowed to vote for the candidate you dislike least. Thank you, Sally Turner, for being with us this morning.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.